How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to City Skylines, welcome back to Plazas and Promenades, and welcome back to the city of Nerdholm. It is maybe a little bit optimistic of me to call Nerdholm a city, but I think with the number of high-rise buildings that we have, and I think with the right camera angle, I can maybe get away with it. And if there's one thing I've learned in my 10 plus years of YouTube, it is quite simply fake it until you make it. Now, there are a couple of things that I'd like to get to work on today. Thing number one is coming down here to where Middle District used to be and extending this avenue down a little bit and starting to build off of all of these avenues that we have, because I think we could do some very interesting things with this space, especially since it's going to be at a 45-degree angle when compared to everything else that we've built. And then thing number two is perhaps the weirdest thing that I want to do today. I want to come down to this lake, and I'm going to go in and buy that tile. And I'm also going to buy this one just because I can, because I am going to need it. I want to come down to this lake because it has this bit of land. And then with this lake, I want to go into unique buildings, and I want to go to level 4 unique buildings, and I want to get myself the Sea Fortress. It is $100,000, it is $1,200 per week, but I think it would look really good at the end of that little bit of land. And then if we build a castle around here as well, it could sort of be a tourist attraction. We could put a nature reserve into there to actually take Sims into that space. And we could say that this is an old prison of some sort that was maybe here, 200 years ago. It doesn't really matter all that much. I just think it's going to look really cool. And to be honest, I think the Sea Fortress is going to look better on this lake than it probably would coming off of the quays that we have down here by Cedar Hall. But before we get to any of that, there is something very important that we have to do. We need to go into the economy, and we need to increase taxes on high-density buildings all the way up to 12%, because a decent chunk of the city is now high density, and that's going to mean that I start making a little bit more money off of everyone in a high-density building, which is going to allow me to get a little bit silly with this space down here, which is very much something that I want to do. I think today's episode, more so than perhaps any that have come before, it's not necessarily going to be super silly. It's not going to be super over the top, but I'll let you in on a secret. It's not really a secret after I tell you, but at the time of recording, it is 5:07 a.m. I've been awake for a very long time, and today has not been my day. So a little bit of chill, silly, fun City Skylines is exactly what the Doctor ordered. And I can say that because I have a replica of the 10th Doctor's suit from Doctor Who, so I'm going to say that I'm ordering this for myself. Now, when it comes to this little space down here, I want to do something a little strange with it. I want to have a central sort of emergency services space. And to do that, I want to get some 2-lane, one-way roads with sidewalks. And I want to go to, say, let's see, if we turn on guidelines, we'll go to about here. And we're going to go 11 units. We're going to go 20 units to about right there. And we're going to come down. And I'm going to do this again. We're going to go 10 units this time, though. We're going to go 20 across, and we're going to come down. And then what I'd like to do is continue that straight through to this avenue. And that's going to give me some problems with zoning, but honestly, that's okay. We're dealing with angles, and that's sort of what City Skylines does. Now, with this space right here, what I really want to do is something weird. I want to get a police department, and by that I mean I want to get 2 of the high-capacity police headquarters, because it turns out, weirdly, they're quite small. They're expensive. They are $95,000 each, and they're $2,400 a week. But 2 of them will fit right next to each other, right about here. And that is what I'm going to do. I'm also going to use Move It to grab everything in this space, and I'm going to level it to this height right about here because I do want this to be level. I'm not too worried about pipes at the moment either, but there's a very specific reason I want to do this. And that reason is because, well, I've just realized these cars should probably be allowed to get onto that one-way road. I'll tell you what, let's turn the road in front of the station into the 2-lane road with median. And maybe this one as well could be a 2-lane road with median. I suppose that's probably okay. And that'll let the cars, I suppose, go out this way, which, you know what, maybe not a 2-lane road with median. Maybe this time they should be allowed to just sort of cross over. And maybe we'll give them 4 lanes. I don't know if they need 4 lanes, but they're going to get 4 lanes. And we'll do just a very simple one-way road right here, and that should be fine. So let's go ahead and just set up the junctions for this, the junctions for that, or the lanes for all of this, I should say, and make sure everything's okay, which it now is. But the reason I want to do this is because I can go and get a police helicopter depot, and I could put it right here, and it fits perfectly. We have this building down at this end, we have the helicopters in the middle, we have the police headquarters at the end here. I mean, I think that looks interesting. I think that looks quite cool. I think it's different, and eventually it's going to be surrounded by what I hope to be interesting looking buildings. So this is very much what I want to do with this space. So let's go ahead and get some pipes in here just to stop them from complaining. And so, with the police helicopters set up and coming and going and doing their business and doing what they've got to do, enforcing the law, we have a little bit of space right here next to the avenue. And interestingly, in that space, the high-capacity fire station would happen to fit perfectly. And I do wonder if next to it would this happen to fit. So is the high-capacity fire station, by any chance, is it 4 units? No, it isn't. It's 6. So if we had a little bit more space here, we could fit this guy and also the hospital. I might still put the hospital in here and sacrifice the slightly larger fire station for this one right on the corner. And that way we can have all of these emergency services in this one space, which I think would be a very good idea, especially since this is going to be a pretty chunky district. But I don't necessarily want to spend all of that money yet because, well, quite frankly, we have to build the district first. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to come in here with a few more of these roads, and I just want to make this space as interesting as I possibly can. I want it to be a little bit different. I want it to be... I don't want to put too many curves or anything in here, but I want the space to be just different, just interesting, just kind of fun. I want it to just look a bit weird from above, really. So this, for example, is a little bit weird. And what I could do with this is a road down to there. I could do a road to here and a road to there. And then between these guys, I could use pedestrian streets with cobblestone, such as the small cobblestone pedestrian street with trees, to connect these guys together, and suddenly we have space for, well, whatever buildings we want to put in there, and there's pedestrian connections, which makes this feel, I think, a little bit more special. In fact, what I could do is this, so that these are just dead-end roads, which is maybe a little bit weird, but we could put pedestrian streets between these, or just some pedestrian paths between them if we really wanted to. Same with this space down here. I just want to do something, most importantly, that's at an angle to what we've, had already. So that's kind of my plan, and while I'm doing this, there was an interesting comment that I read recently, and I wanted to tell you about it and talk to you about it a little bit, because it was talking about this series and the sort of change in format that the channel has undergone with this series, and the specifically the change in my voice that seems to have come with this series. There's a reason for it, and it's not just because I'm trying to be pretentious and make this feel like a fancier video than it is. I promise there is actually a reason that I'm talking the way I'm talking. And very simply, it's So I talked about this in a softwaring video recently, but I think it's important to talk about it again because I know there's a few new people to the channel since I started this series. Hello, I've noticed you and I do appreciate you. Long story short, last year I had COVID-19 and it ever so slightly messed up my lungs a little bit. And ever since then, I've been a little shorter of breath than I would like to be, and it's taken a bit more effort to sort of project my voice the way I used to, and to have sort of the same energy that I've typically tried to have with videos. And essentially, in the last couple of weeks, I got sick again, and I don't know necessarily what it was. It felt like COVID-19 again, but I did tests, and apparently it wasn't. But it felt like it. I had the same shortness of breath. I had the same sort of just overall feeling that I had when I had COVID-19. And since then, I've just been shorter of breath than I was. Now, when I first had it, the shortness of breath did eventually go away. It wasn't a permanent thing, thankfully. So I'm hoping that this is sort of going to pass as well, and that I'm not forever going to be sounding like a documentary narration wannabe. But I'm also sort of enjoying, I'll be honest, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't sort of enjoying the vibes of the City Skylines videos like this, especially with I think it works very nicely with the cinematic shots that we've been putting into this series. So I've seen a lot of comments talking about those and saying that they really enjoy them, and I love that because I have so much fun making them. Just this entire series has been so much fun, and it makes me really happy to see people enjoying it. So thank you for that, and hopefully that explains why I'm talking the way I'm talking. As well as that, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I got slightly sidetracked. I had something else. Oh yeah, no, I do know what I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about a sort of related comment that made reference to my older way of doing City Skylines, the so-called one-man podcast that I know a lot of people are fans of. That's not gone away forever. I'm just trying to figure out how exactly to slot that style into this particular format. So the one-man podcasts will very much be back in force at some point. And I guess technically this sort of counts as one a little bit. Unofficially. We'll call this an unofficial one-man podcast. But anyway, you can sort of see what I'm trying to do with this district and this space. I think we could probably get away with another road right about here. And I'm going to bring it to this spot. And I think what I'm going to do is get a little road right about here and bring it to that spot as well. And to be quite honest, I feel like what I could probably do here is actually bring roads off of this side and just mess up the zoning at the end of these roads. I think that makes more sense. In fact, if I was to do this, that works a lot better, doesn't it? Because it gives us the ideal zoning for all of this space. It'll work very nicely, I think. So if I just do this right here, and if I go down here and we do exactly that same thing just right here, that works very nicely. And then all I need to do is go in here with the cobblestone streets, and it does get a little bit weird, but maybe we do some pedestrian paths between all of this. Maybe that's how we make this look a little bit better. In fact, we could do that right now, because we can go in with, say, these guys, and all we need to do is, I think this, and I think this. And it's a little bit offset, but I think that's okay. It's it doesn't have to be perfect. It's the imperfections that often make things a little bit more beautiful than they otherwise would be. So we'll lean into some imperfections here. And of course, if things get particularly bad, I will, as I always do, I will hide my crimes with an obscene number of trees. So we'll not worry too much about this. It's okay for now. The only space I'm particularly worried about is this one right here, because I'm not 100% sure how to fill it up. But I suppose we can just start right about, say, let's see here. Bring this right down to that corner and then just disconnect it from the avenue. And I think that's okay. I don't mind that too much. And maybe we just connect this guy, something like that. And that way we have maybe a couple too many junctions right there, but I don't mind it too much. I think with the right zoning and the right district policies, we can probably manage this. And I think what I'll also do is something like this. And that fills up that space really nicely too. So that gives us so much space to play with. So let's go ahead and get some pipes in here, and then let's figure out what the zoning is going to be in here. So first and foremost, we are of course going to put commercial zoning on the avenues, which I decided to go in and adjust so that we have this all nicely lined up. Now I will say, I'm not 100% sure on what the district style should be down here, and I'm considering going ahead and assigning a district and making it European, which is maybe a little bit weird for this space, but I'm strongly considering it just because I think it would be an interesting contrast having these old European style buildings next to this heliport, for example. But I've also seen some comments stating that perhaps this space should be European styled as well, so it would match with the university and match with the cathedral. But to be completely honest, the idea is very intentional that we have this contrast of these wonderful new buildings with these much older buildings. That's why Old Factory Square is very modern with an old factory in the middle of it, or the city center. You know, this right here, I imagine, is extremely, extremely new. It's very colorful. It's very modern. But City Hall, Cedar Hall, is still Cedar Hall. It's historic, surrounded by the modern touch of this wall-to-wall style building. So hopefully that sort of clarifies what I'm trying to do. I'm playing with one of my favorite things, which is contrast. And if you've seen me play City Skylines, you'll be well aware that I love to contrast the old with the new, but I also love to play with urban sprawl that's surrounded by or covered by trees. I really like that as a touch as well. You have all this gray, shades of gray and white and black mixed with green. All these beautiful different shades of green and the pinks of different trees and just all the different vibrant colors that you can get in nature. I love contrasting urban sprawl with the colors that you'll get in nature. I think it's a weirdly beautiful thing. There's just something about it. I'm sure it comes from somewhere. I'm sure there's some movie that I've seen at some point in my life, or some game that I've played at some point in my life that has given me this sort of sense of design for cities. I don't know where it comes from. It's just something I've always sort of enjoyed. Now, let's take a look, I suppose, and see what this would look like if it was to be European. The problem is the European buildings aren't very tall, and they might look a little out of place here because we are going to have these buildings next to it. But at the same time, if I put zoning along this avenue, which I'm going to do, we're going to end up with something really interesting. And that something really interesting is, again, one of my favorite things. It's contrast. Specifically, it's the contrast of these much older wall-to-wall European buildings next to these much newer, much more modern towers and skyscrapers and apartment blocks and modern wall-to-wall commercial buildings. I think it looks great. I think it's a beautiful, I'm going to say the C word, it's a beautiful amount of contrast that we have going on down this street. And I think this has sold me on the idea of this area being European. So that's what we're going to do with it. We're going to have a European styled area next to Jones Park. And we're probably going to surround this with, I suppose, well, at least on this side, we're going to surround this with more modern buildings so we can get more of that ever so special, ever so sacred C word that I absolutely adore. Now, when it comes to the rest of this space, I do want to get some population growth in here. So we're just going to go ahead and fill this space right here with a bunch of residential zoning, and we'll see how that goes. As for this space here, I am thinking I would like to put a fire department in here, such as the high capacity fire station. But next to that, I actually can't put the high capacity hospital because it doesn't fit. I could put the normal hospital in here. I could also not put the European style hospital in here. So we might want to do the regular style hospital and the high capacity fire station. Although, to be fair, medical coverage is not so bad, so maybe the regular hospital would be just fine. I mean, fire coverage is actually not too bad down here either. I think what I'm going to do is I think I am going to go ahead and I am going to put the high capacity fire station in here. I think it would be a good idea. So we'll go ahead and we'll put it right there. It's very expensive, but I think it looks pretty good. And again, it's going to provide some interesting contrast between this and everything else in the district. And then next to it, I would love to put this. It just doesn't fit. Although this guy is not really all that much better. I mean, it fits, but I don't know what it's going to look like. We'll just leave this area like this for now. I'm not too concerned about it. What I'm mostly interested in, actually, is filling up some of this space. So let's go ahead and replace this commercial zoning with a little bit of office zoning instead. So all of this is going to be offices. All of this is going to be offices. This bit at the end, I guess, could be. This bit here is going to be office zoning as well, but it's very specifically only 3 tiles deep because we don't want anything building on the pedestrian roads here. And I suppose we could potentially just surround this space with offices in general. So let's actually do that. And you know what? I want to do a little road right here. Let's go ahead and get ourselves this guy, and we'll just bring it straight back so that I can fill up this space with a little bit of zoning as well. Just something like that so that we have this area nicely surrounded. And then for here, I mean, I'm not really super concerned about what this looks like, but I wonder, could I get maybe a little carport on this corner? Is that an option? Is that something we could do here to fill up that space? This actually works fine for me. I don't mind that at all. I think it fills up the space well, although I would like this one. I think this one would be a lot better. So I wonder if I was to put one here. In fact, get rid of you, get rid of you. I think, let's see. So where would I want you to be? I would want you there, and then this one, I don't think it's going to let me put it there unless I use move it, unfortunately, which I'm trying to not do because, well, there's not really any reason I'm trying not to. I just know it won't do what I want it to do, so I'm trying to not use move it for that reason. But I guess that doesn't really do it. Maybe we do just use this guy in the corner. Or I suppose this works. We can use one of the Plazas and Promenades parks, the large fountain plaza right about there, fills up the corner nicely. And I suppose around that we can just do a bit of zoning and maybe some kind of park back here. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, but we can certainly figure that out. This right here can be commercial. This right here is going to be nothing. In fact, this right here can be nothing as well. We can keep that open. We can turn that into like a pedestrianized space. And I think this will be okay. I think this will be pretty great. Now, something I did realize is that we haven't used any of these glass roof plazas yet. And I could do this. I could use them down this central road that leads to City Hall, and I think that would be really interesting. I've got to be honest, I do think that would be really interesting to have a bunch of these guys sort of lining that road, but then I realize this is all going to be part of a park, and it's going to be lined with, I guess, fences. It doesn't have to be, but it's going to be. So maybe I use this idea right about here. Maybe as it leads into this district. That's an option as well. I do want to use one of these. I don't know where I'm going to use it. Right here, actually, that would be perfect right there. Actually, that would be very, very good, but I'm going to have to move these guys. these small pedestrian area service points are going to have to go somewhere else. So let's try and be a little bit sneaky with this. This is a little bit of a tangent. I'm going to be honest. This is getting a little bit sidetracked here, but I did say that today was going to be a little bit more old school in terms of how it's presented as a City Skylines video. So we're kind of leaning into the improv that I love to do sometimes. So we'll take out all of this. We'll take out all of this. We'll take out all of this. Can I put this guy here? I absolutely can. And I think that looks pretty cool. I do. I think that looks pretty good. We might need to bring these roads up a little bit further to, I don't know, do something with them. But I think that looks pretty good. I actually think that looks pretty cool. I just need something beside it to sort of set it off a little bit. So I might need to do something, like I said, with these roads. I just don't really know what. I think for now we'll just let it rebuild. And oh, I love that. I actually love that. That's so cool. It frames City Hall, and it makes me wonder if I could can I get a camera shot that goes right through there? I can totally get a camera shot. That's on fire. All right, we'll save that until the end of the video. You're going to have to stay tuned and see if we can fly a camera straight through there. And so now that this district is starting to build up really nicely, and it's starting to nicely bump up the population, I want to get some public transport down here. And what I really want to do with public transport is completely get rid of this metro, which maybe seems a little bit weird considering we've just built it, but I really do. I really want to get rid of it because I think it's just a little bit terrible. So I'm going to use Move It to do this. I'm going to select only nodes, and I'm only going to select tracks. I'm going to use the underground view, and I'm essentially going to just select every section of track that isn't going to be selecting my my tram lines, and I'm just going to delete all of it because it just doesn't work. It's just not very good. Now what I will have to do is go in and bulldoze this metro station, and then I need to go and find the other metro stations. So we have one right on this corner, which I'm going to want to bulldoze if the game's going to let me do it, which it now is. We have one or two over here as well. We have this guy, and we also have, I believe, yes, two more. We have one right about here that can go away, and then we have one right about here that can go away as well. And what we can do with this is just replace the zoning with some actual, or replace the space with some actual zoning. This space I'm actually going to probably come back to in just a second and do something else with, but the reason I want to get rid of this is just simply because I can probably do it better, and I can probably make it a little bit more interesting. So what I'm going to do is go into transport, and what I'm tempted to do is actually just put a metro station right there. One of the old school standard underground metro stations right there in front of Cedar Hall. Now, it's not necessarily going to blend in with everything, and I suppose I could put it here instead, which wouldn't be the worst place in the world for it. I could do both. I could definitely do both. I think I'm going to do this. I think I'm going to put an old school standard City Skylines metro station right there, and then either side of that, I'm just going to cut through with some walls and open this up a little bit. I might need to shuffle some nodes along just a little bit to make this make sense, but I think this is kind of, well, to quote one of my favorite shows, and I'm sure many of you watch this show as well, I think this is the way, right? I think this is the way we should go for the metro in the middle. I think this fits beautifully in here, and I think this is going to give us something that's going to look pretty good. Now, I think I do want to pave around this, and I do want to actually connect it to everything. So let's just do a little bit of paving right here and see if I can get away with doing this custom. I sort of can. I don't think it's going to play very nicely here, though. That could be better, but I'm going to allow that for now. We'll decorate around this shortly. Now, that's going to be in the middle of everything. This is probably going to be a very, very busy metro, but what I can do is I can probably, if the game's going to let me do this, which it doesn't really want to play nice right now, but what I'd like to do is I'd like to see if I can get away with, let's see, turn off guidelines and do this and connect those, because I can use that as a bypass for this station. So essentially, if a metro line isn't going to stop here, it can use that section of track, and I think that's going to be pretty good for us. Now, what I do want to do is start using this parallel underground metro station. And what I'm going to do is be quite, not super generous with it, but I'm going to be a little bit generous in my placement. And I think what I'll do, now interestingly, I guess I do probably have, do I have collisions off at the moment? I do. I want to place this somewhere over here, 100% somewhere over here. And I kind of like the idea of placing it up on this road. I think somewhere like right here, next to that tram line, might not be a bad place for a metro station, so we can link over to this guy. I want that to loop down. It's going to be a bit of a sharp turn, but I'm going to have it loop down, I guess, to this corner near that bus stop. And then I want it to sort of come down into this old town looking district. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use this metro station, the large underground metro station, because it fits perfectly in there, although it does look like it's going to have to be in a pedestrian zone to go in that spot, so I'll put it down here instead. It looks out of place, but it's kind of supposed to. That's very much intentional. We can bring this down, we can connect it to whatever side of this thing we want to connect it to, and I suppose I could probably connect it to this side and bring it down through here. So we'll bring this down, I guess, to somewhere down here. And I'm going to use maybe the old school metro station again, or maybe this guy, since it is actually quite neat. So I think this guy right about there. So we can connect those together pretty well. And then what I suppose I could do as well is actually have this guy start going this way at a bit of a diagonal across to perhaps a stop on this side of Jones Park. Might be a little bit weird, but I might give it a shot. Let's do this side of Jones Park. And then perhaps, well, that's starting to make me think that this should be a larger station, but we'll give this a shot. So this comes over, down to here, down to here. This one breaks off to this spot in Jones Park. And I don't really know where it goes from there. I'm going to be quite honest. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe we put it next to the schools. That might not be a bad place for it at all, actually. Right next to some education. Right about there. I actually like that a lot. I'm not 100% sure how it's going to connect here at all, but I like that a lot. Now, usually, this is where I would put a cinematic shot to sort of illustrate what I've done. But as it stands, there's not really any above-ground metro to show you, so it wouldn't be a very interesting cinematic. So you're just going to have to take my word for it that this is very cinematic looking, and it is hopefully going to be an interesting metro. The red line goes from all the way down here, up and around into Cedar Hole and down to the industry. And the blue line goes from our new district up into Jones Park, into Old Factory Square, and then into the city center. And I'm hoping for some good things with this. I'm hoping it'll be relatively busy and relatively popular and something that people are going to want to use. Not 100% sure that they will use it, but I'm hopeful that they might. Especially people in this district, which is already looking quite busy, and then down this way is looking a little bit less busy. But that's okay. I want people to use this, and I'm sure as this district continues to grow, they will go ahead and use it. Now, in terms of buses, we still only have one bus line. It does have a decent number of passengers, but we should probably start looking into better ways to manage our buses. Might not be a bad idea to start getting people moving around places like Dale Hills here, rather than just going from district to district, really, because that's what the metro's for. But I'm not really too interested right now in going crazy with the buses. What I'm interested in doing right now is figuring out why I can't hit escape. There we go. So you can add that menu. What I'm interested in right now is just making sure that this space does build and does look how I want it to, such as this being some kind of little pedestrianized park. So that's something we could very quickly do. And I want to make sure that there are good, I suppose, foot connections between a lot of these streets. I mean, we have some good connections here. We have not that many connections down here, which is a little bit worrying. We could probably put a pedestrian street connecting these guys together. And down this way could be a little bit better too, but actually, to be quite honest, I think what I'm going to do very simply is this, and very simply is this. And right here, I want to redo this little section of road because I'm pretty sure it could be a little bit better if we just keep it at ground level like so. That's going to let me just go ahead and get an extra little bit of zoning just across here. And I suppose right back here we'll do residential and residential. And that fills up that space beautifully. So we'll let that build, and that'll give us a nice sort of line of buildings down this road. And now we're really starting to see, at least on this left side, we're starting to see a border forming around what is eventually, hopefully, going to be a really cool looking park. So now that this new district is more or less completely zoned and has more or less completely built, and has also pushed us above 16,000 Sims, which, by the way, in case you were curious, makes us a big city and gives us the Liberal Arts College campus area, as well as the crematorium, which I think is quite important. Now that this is all done, I want to turn my attention towards this lake, because I did say we were going to have a little bit of fun with this and do a little bit of design with this. Now, that's not to say that this district is done. There is detailing to be done. I've already gone in and detailed around this roundabout with some trees and some bushes, and to perhaps your surprise, there are no fences present around any of this. It is just trees and bushes and paths to make it look like a nice pedestrianized area. I did also change up this area a little bit. I turned this into a highway roundabout just simply because I wanted rid of the zoning on it. At some point, I'll go and get a mod that lets me turn off zoning, but for now, this is going to be a highway roundabout, but I think it's about time we come away from here. Oh, actually no. There's one last little thing I want to talk about just before we move on. We're not going to build anything, but it is important to talk about this. I want to connect this avenue to this highway at some point, and I'm probably just going to use another trumpet, a sort of three-way T interchange, but that's not for today, because, like I said, I want to turn my attention to this lake, and essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to select trees, and I'm going to just clear all of this space. I'm going to select props, and I'm going to clear all of this space, and I'm going to select buildings and get rid of those rocks right there because I just don't need them. The only thing I'm interested in for this area is getting myself a sea fortress, and I kind of want the thing to be right there. Now, annoyingly, this guy needs to be on a road, and I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to manage to do that, because this might end up needing to be in a pedestrian area, which means I might need to put keys around this, and I might need to make this a little bit more rigid than I was hoping to. But I suppose we can still make this kind of interesting if I go ahead and put some keys around it, maybe a road, maybe some European buildings. I don't really want buildings though. I want this to be a castle, so we're going to have to figure that out. And so, after considerably more time than I care to admit, Nerdholm Castle is taking shape. And I say taking shape because this, as far as I'm concerned, isn't finished. There's a lot still to be done with it. I need to figure out how I'm going to connect it to the highway. I need to figure out how I'm going to make this thing fit in with the rest of the city. Is the city going to come down around this? Is this maybe going to be an extension of some kind of park at some point? I don't really know what it's going to be in terms of how it fits in with everything else that we have going on in Nerdholm at the moment, but I do really like how this thing has turned out, even if the current connection to the highway is basic. And it is definitely basic. I think that's the most fair way I can describe it. And I think it's also fair to say that the small pedestrian area service point here probably needs to go as well, and that we could probably bring the maintenance fee down on this quite considerably because, well, let's be quite honest, a lot of this space isn't actually being used. So we can bring all of this area out of the pedestrian zone, and this is probably going to save me quite a bit of money. So all of that space, and even a lot of the space in the middle here, in fact, right down that road, can all sort of go away. And now we're down to $1,400 instead of what was about $4,500. So this, I think, is fine. This is kind of what I was looking for. I like to imagine that Nerdholm Castle was, once upon a time, it was a medieval fort. It was a medieval castle that was built on this lake, on this bit of land that sticks out into the lake, and it was sort of the crown jewel of the kingdom. It was where the king would stay, you know, on this beautiful, beautiful lake that I imagine was once just surrounded by trees. This was probably once just a giant forest. And then somewhere along through history, this fort would have been built. And I'm almost tempted to say this fort might have been built during, I don't know what war this might have been built during or because of, but it was long after Nerdholm Castle was essentially abandoned and partially left to ruin. You know, they knock out this wall, they build this fort right on at the end of it as maybe a prison, which is, you know, what it could have been. Maybe it was a new royal thing, but I like to think it was probably some kind of prison. And then I like to think that during either the First or Second World War, we might have had some army holed up in here. They built some bunkers into the walls and used this as their base of operations at some stage. I will admit, when I was building this, I don't know if it'll be in the time-lapse or not, I did, at one point, put some turrets on these corners here before remembering that this is, in fact, a lake and not the ocean. Therefore, the turrets are going to have nothing to shoot at. So, we have some artillery bunkers facing this way, we have some infantry bunkers facing this way, and to be quite honest, that wasn't my original idea, but I did discover that placing these things on these corners, it does help terminate the keys that would otherwise go nowhere. But like I said, there is a lot more detail that needs to go into this. There's a lot more work I want to do to make this feel a little bit more like it's part of the terrain, but I don't think there's too much I can do until we start expanding our city down this way and figuring out if this is perhaps going to be some kind of giant park at the center of another city district. So that's Nerdholm Castle. And then Dale Hills, whatever it's going to be called, leave suggestions in the comments, of course. I think we've got a pretty good little bit of growth on the city right here. I think we've got a little bit of lore coming into Nerdholm, which is very exciting. We have some European-style buildings coming in here. We have a lot of traffic coming in here as well, which, to be honest, I wonder if we could perhaps get rid of some of that traffic with a 6-lane road. Let's give that a shot and see what happens if I do this, and then just a little bit of lane management right there, and just see what happens. I'm curious to see if the traffic can maybe get around a little bit quicker. In fact, I almost wonder if we should perhaps change this entire stretch into a 6-lane road, since it is an avenue going between 2 roundabouts, but it looks like that little bit of road has actually helped. And then up here, things are busy, but not too busy. I'm not really too concerned about how busy this is right now. We've got people going up and down this pedestrian path or pedestrian street, which looks amazing. We have so many people just walking around in here, driving around in here. We have so many people walking and driving around. Oh, how many are using the metro? That's a question. That's a question I need an answer to. Public transport is here, 885. There's a lot of people using the metro in Nerdholm right now. That's very exciting. I'm very pleased with what we've managed to do today. Even if half of it was spent with a silly castle. I like this. I'm really pleased with where Nerdholm has gotten to. We are having some garbage problems, but that's okay. We can deal with that in the next episode, because that is going to do us for today. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure as always. And as always, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.